Anthony Collins stood across the street from his own car dealership, staring up at the massive blue and silver sign bearing his name. 6 locations now, built on years of hard work and the foundation his father had left him. Yet he hadn't stepped foot inside this particular store in over a year. Something about that fact gnawed at him. Reports from his district manager had been mixed. Sales numbers looked steady, but there were troubling whispers. A steady rise in customer complaints, murmurs about pushy tactics, rumors about corners being cut. It wasn't enough to call a crisis yet, but Anthony knew better than most that fires always started small. And today, he wasn't going to rely on second-hand stories. Today, he would see for himself. Leaning against the side mirror of a parked car, Anthony adjusted his disguise. A thick, scruffy beard, wire-framed glasses, and a battered baseball cap hid the sharp features that adorned corporate billboards and franchise awards. Gone was the sleek CEO in tailored suits. In his place stood a man in a faded denim jacket and a washed-out t-shirt, just another customer browsing for a deal. Anthony took a breath, steadying himself. He wasn't just stepping into a showroom. He was stepping into a reality check. As soon as he entered, the familiar scent of new leather and fresh brewed coffee hit him, almost comforting in its normalcy. The bright showroom floor buzzed with the usual symphony of sales chatter and clacking keyboards. No one looked twice at the scruffy stranger weaving between the shiny cars. Perfect. That was exactly what he needed. Anthony's plan was simple. Act like a potential customer. Listen, observe, and most importantly, feel. Numbers on a spreadsheet didn't tell you how your employees treated people. They didn't tell you if your business still carried your values, or if it had been hollowed out by ambition, fear, or simple neglect. A salesman in his early 30s spotted him and immediately peeled away from a nearby group, a broad, practiced smile lighting up his face. His name tag read, Derek. The kind of guy who looked like he could sell you a bridge you already owned. Hey there, looking for a new ride today? Derek's voice was syrupy smooth, almost too polished. Anthony kept his tone casual, tucking his hands into the pockets of his jeans. Just browsing. Thinking about a truck, something reliable. Derek's smile widened like a wolf catching a scent. He gestured grandly toward a gleaming black pickup near the window. You came to the right place, man. This beauty just had a brand new engine installed last week. Runs like a dream. Anthony's heart tightened. Brand new engine? That truck hadn't moved off the lot in 6 months. The last report he read showed nothing more than a basic oil change. He schooled, his face into mild interest. But inside, a different fire had begun to kindle. Not stretching the truth, not bending the facts. A flat-out lie, delivered without a blink. Before he could respond, another voice, softer but stronger in its conviction, interrupted from behind. Derek, that's not right. Anthony turned to see a young woman standing near the reception desk, her dealership polo neat but worn. Her name tag read Lisa. Her arms were crossed, her jaw tight. Derek's face darkened instantly. Stay out of this, Lisa. His voice was sharp, like a warning. Lisa didn't back down. The engine wasn't replaced. We just did a basic tune-up. You can't tell customers. Derek cut her off with a loud, dismissive laugh. Why don't you go file some paperwork or something? I got this. Lisa glanced at Anthony, her eyes flickering with frustration and apology, then turned and walked away, her shoulders stiff. Anthony let the scene sink in. He had come here expecting to uncover problems. He hadn't expected to find them so quickly, or so deeply rooted. And he wasn't leaving until he got to the bottom of it. Today, someone was about to learn that not all customers were who they seemed. Anthony let Derek lead him across the glossy showroom, weaving between spotless cars and smiling faces that suddenly felt like a facade. The small office Derek ushered him into was cramped, with a worn desk, a framed picture of a luxury sports car, and a stack of contracts leaning precariously to one side. Derek shut the door behind them with an eager grin, grabbing a pen from the desk. Now, he said, tapping the paper briskly. If we get this signed today, I can probably knock a couple hundred off the price. Special manager's deal. But only if you commit right now. His voice was too smooth, too polished. Anthony could almost hear the trap snapping shut. Leaning back in the plastic chair, Anthony played the part. "And if I need a little more time to think about it?" he asked casually. Derek's smile faltered just slightly. "See, thing is," he said, voice lowering like he was sharing a secret, "we got other buyers looking at this truck. If you wait, I can't guarantee it'll still be here." Another lie. Anthony could practically feel the anger simmering beneath his skin now. Derek wasn't just embellishing. He was weaving a web of deceit without the slightest hesitation. Anthony had seen enough. He stood slowly, pulling off his baseball cap, raking a hand through his hair, and removing the wire-framed glasses. Derek's mouth opened slightly, confusion flickering across his face, then dawning horror. Anthony's voice was low, even, but it cut sharper than any shout. "I own this dealership." Derek's face drained of color. He took a step back instinctively, the pen slipping from his fingers onto the desk. "And I just caught you lying to a customer. Multiple times," Anthony continued, his tone calm but lethal. The silence in the tiny office was deafening. Anthony didn't bother giving Derek room to spin excuses. He simply turned toward the door, his voice carrying with it the weight of absolute authority. "Get the manager, now!" For a moment, Derek just stood there, frozen. Then he scrambled out of the office, his steps hurried and uneven. Anthony waited, arms folded, heart hammering, not from nerves but from fury held tight under a leash, and Few minutes later, the manager arrived. Broad-shouldered, mid-40s, wearing a different colored blazer meant to denote authority. Anthony recognized him instantly from his file. Rick Morrison, a man who, on paper, kept the place running. In reality, Anthony now suspected, Rick had been coasting on autopilot. Rick's eyes widened as he took in Anthony's face. He offered a stiff smile. "Mr. Collins, I wasn't expecting you today." "I wasn't planning on being here," Anthony replied smoothly. "But I had a feeling something was wrong. Now I know I was right." He gestured toward Derek. "He lied to my face, told me this truck had a brand new engine when it hasn't had anything but an oil change. Then tried to rush me into signing using false claims." Rick's expression tightened. He turned to Derek. "Is that true?" Derek straightened slightly, his voice defensive. "Look, it's just sales talk. Customers expect a little, embellishment. That's how we close deals." Anthony's jaw flexed. He stepped closer, voice dropping a shade colder. "That wasn't stretching the truth, Derek. That was fraud." Derek swallowed hard, the confidence draining from him entirely now. Anthony turned his sharp gaze onto Rick. "And how often does this happen?" There was a hesitation, barely a second, but in that moment, Anthony knew. This wasn't a rogue employee. This was a symptom of a deeper rot. Rick cleared his throat. "I trust my team to handle customers professionally. If mistakes were made..." "Mistakes?" Anthony's voice cracked like a whip. "Mistakes are accidents. What I saw was deliberate, systemic." Rick's lips pressed into a thin line. But he didn't argue. He couldn't. Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Man, you don't get it. We've got quotas to hit. Customers waste our time all day trying to lowball us. We gotta do what we gotta do to survive." Anthony stared at him, feeling the slow, seething disappointment settle deeper in his gut. "You think that justifies lying to people? Trapping them into deals they don't understand? Putting this dealership, my family's name, at legal risk?" Derek opened his mouth, then shut it again. Anthony turned back to Rick. "And you. You sat there, scrolling on your phone while your people lied under your roof." Rick's cheeks flushed slightly, but he didn't deny it. Anthony took a deep breath, steeling himself. Then he delivered the verdict. "Derek, you're suspended. Effective immediately. I don't know if there's a place for you here after this. We'll decide that after a full review." Derek didn't argue. He didn't protest. He simply nodded stiffly and slunk from the office, the door clicking shut behind him. Anthony pivoted toward Rick. "And you're going to give me an action plan by tomorrow? A full review of sales practices, customer complaints, employee feedback, everything. If you want to keep your job, you're going to show me how you're going to fix this dealership. No excuses, no empty promises, real change. Rick exhaled heavily, his shoulders sagging under the weight of it. Understood. Anthony nodded once sharply. I built this business to help people find cars they can trust, not to trick them out of their savings. He let that linger a moment longer, then turned and walked out of the office, leaving Rick to sit with the wreckage of what had been exposed. Out in the showroom, the bright lights gleamed off polished metal and plastic smiles. But Anthony's eyes found Lisa, still at the reception desk, still working, still upright. A rare thing in a sea of false fronts. And Anthony knew, if he was going to rebuild this place into something worth being proud of again, she would be a part of it. The real work was just beginning. Anthony stood still for a moment, watching Lisa at the reception desk. She was typing something into the computer, pretending not to notice the upheaval that had just rocked the showroom. But he could tell, by the stiffness of her shoulders, the tight set of her jaw, that she had noticed everything. She had seen it coming long before he had. He walked over, each step deliberate. Lisa glanced up, her expression cautious, guarded. She probably thought she was about to be reprimanded, maybe even fired. After all, in places like this, speaking the truth often came at a cost. Anthony stopped just in front of her. Lisa, he said quietly, can I have a word? She nodded, quickly logging off the terminal, following him toward a glass-walled office near the back. Anthony held the door open for her, waited until she was seated before shutting it gently behind them. The glass muted the noise of the dealership, turning the office into a bubble of uneasy silence. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed loosely. For a few seconds, he simply studied her. This young woman who had shown more backbone in a 5-minute span than most employees showed in 5 years. You spoke up, he said, voice low but firm, when no one else would. Lisa straightened slightly, but there was a flicker of nervousness in her eyes. I couldn't let him lie like that, not to a customer. Anthony smiled faintly. You didn't just do anything. You did exactly what every employee here should have done. She blinked, clearly not expecting that. Thank you, she said, her voice quieter now. He nodded, then gestured to the chair across from her and pulled one for himself. Sitting down, he steepled his fingers in front of him. Tell me, Lisa, how often has this been happening? She hesitated. It was the hesitation of someone who had been burned before, someone who knew that truth was a dangerous thing in the wrong hands. But then she drew a steady breath and answered. More than it should, she said. Derek, others too. It's like the way things are done here. The customers come in and the goal isn't to find them the right car. It's to close the sale, no matter what it takes. Half-truths, pressure, sometimes even straight-up lies. Anthony's stomach twisted, but he kept his voice even. And management? Lisa shook her head slowly. They look the other way. They don't tell us to lie, but they reward the ones who close deals no matter how they do it. If you push back, you're seen as not a team player. Anthony exhaled, the weight of it settling heavier on his shoulders. And yet you spoke up. Anyway, she shrugged, almost embarrassed. It didn't seem like a choice, it just felt wrong. Anthony studied her for a long moment. Integrity wasn't a word you could slap onto a mission statement and call it a day. Integrity lived, or died, in the choices people made when no one was looking. He leaned forward slightly. I'm not here today just to reprimand a few bad apples, he said. I'm here to tear down a rotten system and rebuild it the right way. Lisa's eyes widened a little, but she didn't speak. She was listening carefully now. I want this dealership, and every dealership with my name on it, to stand for something better than this, Anthony continued. We're going to rebuild customer trust. We're going to stop selling pressure and start selling transparency. No more lies, no more games, just honesty and real service. Lisa bit her lip, hesitating. That sounds good, But people won't change overnight. Anthony nodded. I know. Some will fight it, some will leave, and that's fine. They were never the right people to begin with. He leaned back in his chair, letting his words sink in. I need people like you, Lisa, he said simply. People who already know what doing the right thing feels like. I want you to be part of this change. She blinked again, caught between disbelief and hope. Me, you, he confirmed. Your instincts are good, your courage is better. I'm going to be putting together a new ethics and training program, and I want your input. Lisa stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide if this was real. Finally, she asked almost shyly, Where do we start? Anthony smiled. We start by rewriting the rules. No hidden fine print, no gimmicks. When a customer walks in, here they deserve to know exactly what they're buying. If there's a problem with a vehicle, we disclose it. If a warranty is limited, we make it crystal clear. Lisa nodded slowly, the idea building momentum inside her. And the salespeople? They'll be retrained or replaced, Anthony said bluntly. I'm not asking for miracles, I'm asking for integrity. If someone can't meet that standard, they have no future here. Lisa straightened in her chair, something settling into her posture. A cautious but growing sense of pride. I want to help, she said firmly. Anthony gave a short nod. Good. You just became a key part of the future here. The glass walls of the office reflected the bright lights of the showroom, the endless rows of shiny cars. But for the first time in a long time, Anthony felt like they might actually be worth something more than profit margins and quarterly goals. He stood, offering her his hand. She shook it, her grip stronger than he expected. We're going to change. Things, Anthony said. Lisa smiled, small but fierce. One car, one customer at a time. Anthony chuckled. Exactly. And just like that, something rare and powerful had been set into motion, not with threats or punishments, but with something harder to find and far harder to fake, real belief. The next morning, Anthony stood alone at the center of the dealership's gleaming showroom floor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Cars lined the edges like silent sentinels, polished to a mirror shine. But it wasn't the cars he was thinking about. It was the people. Slowly, the staff trickled in. Some shuffled, clutching coffees. Others lingered near the corners, arms crossed defensively. The tension was thick enough to taste. Anthony gave them time to settle. Let them feel the weight of the moment. Let them know something bigger than a morning sales meeting was about to happen. When the room fell quiet, Anthony stepped forward. I'm not here today to talk about sales numbers, he began, his voice carrying easily through the open space. I'm here because the way this dealership has been doing business is over. A ripple went through the crowd, side glances, tense shoulders, a few narrowed eyes. Anthony kept going. We will not lie to customers. We will not pressure them. We will not twist the truth to close a deal. He let the words settle like iron against stone. I don't care if we lose a few sales in the short term. I care about building something that lasts, something we can be proud of when we walk out these doors at the end of the day. Some employees nodded, tiny, almost reluctant. Others stood stiffly, their jaws clenched, waiting for the catch. Anthony moved deliberately, pacing the floor like a general before battle. Starting today, every employee will complete a new ethics and sales training program. It's mandatory. No exceptions. A low murmur swept through the group. Skepticism, resistance. I know some of you think you've been doing just fine, he said, his tone hardening slightly. And maybe you have. But just fine isn't good enough anymore. Not here. He paused, letting that reality land. Every deal from the past 6 months will be reviewed, Anthony continued. If we find any that were closed with deception, we're making it right. Full stop. The murmurs grew louder now. Anthony could hear the anxiety building. The whispers about refunds, lost commissions, damaged reputations. Good. Let them feel uncomfortable. Change didn't come easy, especially for people who had learned how to survive in the cracks. Anthony scanned the room, his gaze sharp. He wasn't looking for the biggest seller or the smoothest talker. He was looking for the ones who stood taller instead of shrinking back. The ones who understood that doing the right thing wasn't weakness. It was strength. It was Lisa who broke the silence. She stepped forward, her Evans Motors polo tucked neatly, her chin lifted with quiet defiance. "I think this is the right move," she said, her voice cutting clean through the tension. "Customers deserve honesty, and so do we." A few heads turned sharply in her direction. Anthony caught it, the flickers of surprise, respect, and on some faces, resentment. Lisa didn't flinch. "If we do this the right way," she continued, "people will trust us. We'll build something better, stronger." Anthony gave a small nod of approval, keeping his face composed. He wanted the ownership of this change to come from them, not just from him. Another younger salesman, Josh, shifted awkwardly beside a black SUV. "I get wanting to do the right thing," Josh said hesitantly. "But customers don't always want the truth. Sometimes they just want to hear what makes them feel good enough to buy." Anthony turned toward him. "Maybe, but if the only way we can close a deal is by lying, we don't deserve the sale." Josh looked down, saying nothing more. An older technician from the service bay, a wiry man named Rick, spoke up next. "You really think this dealership can survive being honest?" His voice was rough with years of hard work, but there was no malice in it. Only genuine doubt. Anthony smiled faintly. "I don't just think we'll survive, I think we'll thrive. Trust lasts longer than any sales gimmick." The room quieted again. Some crossed their arms tighter. Some shifted their feet. But there it was, that thin, almost imperceptible crack in the old foundation. Doubt. Hope. It was enough to wedge change inside. Anthony stepped back toward the center of the circle they'd formed. "This won't be easy," he said, softer now. "There'll be bumps, mistakes. Some people might decide this new way isn't for them, and that's fine. I'm not here to force anyone." He let that hang for a heartbeat. "But if you choose to stay, you're choosing integrity. You're choosing to build a business that we're not just proud of, but that customers are proud to walk into. No slogans, no corporate buzzwords, just truth." Lisa's voice carried again, steady this time. "I'm in," she said. Anthony smiled. Tight but real. "Good," he turned back to the others. "Take the day, think about where you stand. Training starts tomorrow. And from tomorrow forward, we are a different dealership." Without another word, he nodded once, firm, final, and walked away, leaving the team in a heavy silence filled with shifting thoughts, unspoken fears, and, just maybe, the first fragile spark of something better. The next week at the dealership felt like walking through a storm that hadn't broken yet. Anthony could feel it in the air. The tension, the second-guessing, the whispered conversations behind closed doors. Change was easy to announce, but living it? That was another battle altogether. Anthony sat at the manager's desk, flipping through a stack of contracts that felt heavier with every page. Lisa sat nearby, helping organize the files. The manager hovered, fidgeting with a pen, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. "Here's another one," Anthony said, sliding a sheet across the desk. "Certified pre-owned. Customer charged a premium. No inspection ever completed." The manager's face tightened. He didn't bother defending it anymore. The evidence spoke louder than any excuse could. "And this one," Lisa added, pulling out another file. "An extended warranty sold. Twice. 2 separate charges. Same car." Anthony exhaled slowly, the frustration pressing down on him like a weight. It wasn't just Derek. It wasn't even just 1 or 2 bad apples. This dealership had been rotting from the inside out for years. "We're contacting every customer impacted," Anthony said, his voice low but firm. "Full refunds, full transparency." The manager hesitated. "Anthony, you realize what that's going to cost?" Anthony leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "You realize what it's already cost us?" He shot back. "Our reputation, our integrity, our future." The manager fell silent. He knew Anthony was right. They had spent years chasing short-term wins while slowly bleeding trust dry. Anthony was here to stop the hemorrhaging, even if it meant tearing down the walls and rebuilding from scratch. They worked late into the evening, making lists, drafting letters, setting up meetings. Some employees grumbled, some resisted outright. Anthony didn't flinch. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here to save what his father had built before it slipped away completely. But not everyone was willing to be saved. Derek cornered Anthony near the service bay the next afternoon. His arms crossed tightly across his chest, a scowl etched deep into his face. "You're making a mistake," Derek said, his voice low and furious. Anthony raised an eyebrow, calm but ready for whatever came next. "Oh?" he said, his tone almost amused. "Enlighten me." Derek stepped closer. "You're gutting this place. Customers expect a little salesmanship. They want to feel like they're winning. You think they'll be happier if we tell them every scratch, every dent, every flaw?" Anthony didn't blink. "I think they deserve the truth," he said simply. Derek scoffed. "You're naive. You're gonna run this place into the ground." Anthony's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "If the only way we survive is by lying to people," he said, "then we don't deserve to survive." For a second, Derek looked like he might say more, might try to argue. But then he saw it. The way Anthony stood, unshakable, unmoving. A wall he couldn't bully or charm his way around. "You've changed," Derek muttered bitterly. Anthony smiled faintly. "No. I finally remembered who I was supposed to be." There it was. The real difference. Derek had been playing a game. Anthony had stopped playing. Derek shifted his weight, glancing toward the showroom where customers browsed under Lisa's watchful eye. She met his gaze briefly, her expression cool, unreadable. "I'm not sticking around for this mess," Derek said finally, straightening. "I'll find some place that appreciates a closer." Anthony nodded. "I'm sure you will." He didn't wish him luck. He didn't offer a handshake. Some endings didn't need ceremony. Derek stalked off, pushing through the glass doors without a backward glance. Anthony watched him go, feeling nothing. No anger. No regret. Just a small, sharp pang of relief. Some people couldn't be part of the future he was building, and that was fine. Better to cut the rot clean than to let it fester. When he turned back toward the showroom, he found Lisa standing nearby, watching him carefully. "Was that?" she asked. Anthony nodded once. It was. Lisa exhaled, a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Good," she said. Anthony allowed himself a small smile. Just a flicker. Just enough. Because this was the hard part, the purging, the rebuilding, the facing down of every shortcut, every compromise, every small betrayal that had been allowed to thrive when no one was looking. It would be brutal. It would be exhausting. But it would be worth it. He stepped out onto the showroom, floor, shoulders squared, ready to face whatever came next. Because this dealership wasn't just getting a new set of rules. It was getting a new soul. The dealership looked different now, and not just on the surface. Anthony stood near the center of the floor, arms crossed loosely, watching the day unfold around him. Conversations between salespeople and customers sounded different. There was less pressure in the air, less desperation in every handshake. Deals took longer now, sure. Customers asked more questions. But when they left, they did so smiling, and not because they'd been tricked into anything. Trust, the real kind, was beginning to creep back through the cracks. Lisa had stepped into a new role naturally, without needing a title change or a ceremony. She moved through the showroom with quiet authority, mentoring the newer staff, modeling exactly the kind of honesty Anthony wanted to define this place. He watched her coach a young salesman through a difficult conversation with a customer, gently reminding him to focus on the truth, not the sale. The kid listened, and the customer walked away, informed, not misled. Small victories. They mattered. Anthony leaned against the wall, letting the sounds of the dealership wash over him. Phones ringing, laughter from the service bay, the soft thud of a signed contract being handed across a desk. Not a single moment of it was perfect, but it was real. And that was better than he could have hoped for just a few weeks ago. Leadership wasn't just about setting goals. It wasn't even about building success. It was about accountability, about standing in the messy, complicated middle when things broke and deciding to fix them anyway, no matter how hard it got. He hadn't come here today to save the dealership. He had come here to save himself, to remember the kind of leader, the kind of man he had always promised he would be. And now, he was just getting started. Anthony's phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from another store manager, another location, another dealership he hadn't walked into in too long. Issues there too. Different surface problems, but the same disease. Beneath it, he smiled faintly, pocketing the phone. One battle at a time, one team at a time. Across the showroom, Lisa caught his eye. She gave him a nod, solid, certain, without a single ounce of doubt behind it. Anthony nodded back, feeling something new settle into his chest. Not victory, not relief. Resolve. This dealership wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning, and, if the others didn't know it yet, they were about to find out. To be continued.